Hi, it's Mary Alice back here with you on this Monday. No, it's Friday. Oh, my week has just flown by. I'm going to start that again. It's Mary Alice here, and I'm back, and it's Friday. Yay, I got it right. Yeah, this week has been incredible in many different ways and has flown by. So here we are again. And today, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for wanting to build your self confidence and to understand yourself better and to learn to love yourself, learn to embrace kind of our shadow sides in order that we can make it better and change the things that we want to change. And today I want to go a little deeper into the attachment theories. I mentioned it before. Hi, Sherry. I'm always so glad you're here. You make me smile so much. So we've talked about relationships. I did 2 shows or episodes or whatever you want to call this broadcast on relationships. And I mentioned attachment theory. And I'm going to go just a little bit deeper into that today because I feel like it's really an important aspect of our lives to understand. I remember studying this in university and it just made so much sense to me. And this is a wonderful way to help us understand how we relate to other people. Again, it goes back to the questions of why do I believe what I believe? Why do I react the way I react? Why am I drawn to certain people that I know they're not good for me? Why does that happen? All these things are subconscious. We don't realize it's happening, but when it's happening, we question it. And usually when we question it, it's more of a, why is this happening to me? Kind of a little bit of a victim mindset because we can't understand that our subconscious is playing out these things within us. So the attachment theories developed in the 1950s. Dr. John Bowlby was very interested in children's mental health and psychology, and he studied how do they relate to their parents? How do they connect to their parents? And he did a lot of massive research. And I'm not going to go into all the studies he did because we'd be here for days. But in essence, he really looked into how children behave with their parents. And one study was he took young, like babies and that kind of stranger, like who are you? You know, when babies go through that phase of you put them in someone else's arms, maybe a grandmother they haven't seen or met before, and they start crying because they're like, who's this person? And then you give them back to the mother or the father, and they're okay, I'm safe. What he did was he put this category of age of children, of babies, young toddlers, babies in a room, and he would instruct the mother to put the baby down with toys in a very safe environment, always very safe, and just told the mother, give the baby a kiss and say, I'll be back. And the mothers would walk out the room, and then they would watch the baby's reaction, like terror or confusion or like, where did she go? That kind of feeling. And then the mothers would come back in a few minutes, and the baby was fine, really relieved. But they went into detail to study deeper, like what kind of reactions did they have? Was it pure terror and like I am dying kind of feeling for a baby, or was it a fussiness but a trust that the mother will come back, and then they begin to play with the toys, and then the mother comes back and they're so delighted and happy? So they were just kind of viewing and going over what kinds of reactions these babies and children would have. It was very interesting. And, you know, back then they could do more studies, which now would be more unethical. So, you know, they would dive into the family life and what was it like and what was the parenting like and all that kind of thing. Because babies need to have instilled in them an amount of trust that they can have in their caregivers, right? I mean, that only makes sense. So depending on how a child's attachment to their parents were, can indicate what kind of relationships they will have later on in life. It's really interesting. It's not 100% predictive, but it's got a good percentage rate. So if you have, like we talked about again, like children who were traumatized, they maybe had parents who were neglectful, addicted, didn't pay attention, or maybe they were authoritarian and completely in control and ruled with anger and fear, or maybe there was other abuse of verbal, physical, sexual abuse within the family. These create healthy attachments, as you can imagine, to the parent. There's no trust, and there's a lot of ambivalence, and there's even like a giving up, like I give up. And so they even found some babies like that, like they didn't care if their mother came or went. It didn't matter. And that was kind of a red flag, like what's going on with that child, that they're not emotionally attached to their mother this way, or their caregiver, or their father, whoever was in this group of study. So there was an indicator there of something going on. And as I shared about my life, as you've heard a few times as I discussed it before, of being in a large family, I was in the middle, and a very abusive father, narcissistic father, and my mother, who was just lived her earlier, like when I was very young, very codependent life. She was depressed. She was overworked with 8 children, did everything imaginable, like clothing, laundry, cooking, cleaning. I mean, all of that. She was just a very busy woman, but also very intelligent. Later on, she was a part of Mensa society. I mean, my mother was incredibly intelligent. She was reading all the time when she ever had like 2 minutes of a break. But that's when I was younger. So that's the formative years. I had an ambivalent attachment to my mother, and I didn't want to have anything to do with my father, who I felt was very mean and distant, emotionally unavailable. Bristly and abusive. So I didn't have a relationship with my father. It was one that I had to tolerate, I'll put it that way. And my mother's, when I was very young, was very ambivalent. I needed her, but I was afraid to bother her because I know she would be upset with me for bothering her. Instead of being embraced and have compassion and love, and, it would be, oh, now what? Here's a Band-Aid. Okay, you're going to be fine. Go out and play. There was really no empathy there. I was taken care of. I was clothed. I had clean clothes. I had food, the meals. I had a house. So all the necessities were taken care of, but the nurturing was lacking. And I had to make it up for myself, because children only know who they are by how they are treated. They don't know they're precious and beautiful and have potential and special personalities. We don't know that when we're children. We're at the mercy of our environment. So it sets us up for seeking relationships with the subconscious motive of someone's going to fix me, So let's put it this way. I think I shared this analogy before. So here's someone similar to me, let's say, and I feel not important, unlovable, not worthy, you name it, whatever those wounds are, we'll call them holes, so to speak, in our little psyches, in our subconscious. We take them with us, along with the coping mechanisms that we had to develop to deal with it, right? Go look at the coping mechanism video if you haven't seen it yet, because that explains a lot too. a whole lot also about our inner child. So here's this person, you know, all 22 years old, educated, looks like an adult, dresses like an adult, wants to be an adult, but doesn't realize the subconscious is full of these emotional wounds that they wanted to they wanted to ignore or think they're over it and it's going to be okay, right? And then you have this person over here, same thing, maybe different kind of wounds, but they have their wounds and holes in them and their subconscious. So this couple comes together. Oh, I love you. This is amazing. So it's the dysfunction that brings them together more than likely. And I'm generalizing here, but more than likely, it's the dysfunction that brings them together. And they might have wild chemistry. Who doesn't love chemistry? Yes, that's important in a relationship, but it is not the most important one at all. It's important. It can't be the only aspect of a relationship. So you have these people here, dysfunctions are drawing them together like a magnet, and they're like this, and they're very romantic, and they go see movies and have a lot of great sex, and they're this and that. And then life begins to, start in, okay? Real life, real situations. Maybe this one has some drama going on in their family, or this one lost a loved one or whatever. But the subconscious in both of them are like, this person's going to fill all those holes and I'm going to be complete. This person's going, oh, this love of my life is going to fill all these holes and I'm going to be complete. Because they have that fallacy, that fantasy of they're going to make me whole. And it never works. It never works. Nobody can make us whole. That doesn't work that way. Our subconscious, in our holes and in our wounds, we seek the outside. We seek external ways of getting our needs met and to fill those holes. And that comes along the lines of power, sex, drugs, alcohol, being the best, like overworking. And they temporarily bring relief of the pain. They temporarily can soothe that moment of not having to deal with the anxiety or the fear or the self-loathing or all the not good enoughs, right? Food even. Mine was comfort food. That was me. I never turned to drugs, but mine was the food aspect. And it can cover those things for a while, but it can't fix us. It never will fix us. In fact, they make things a lot worse because then addiction begins to take place. And if you understand addiction, there's the emotional addiction, the dependency on it. And then especially with alcohol and drugs, there actually becomes a physical addiction where if someone just stops, they can be severely disabled with seizures or maybe even death. So there has to be a program to physically get off the drugs and alcohol. And I'm saying all this because I'm looking at this life in different ways. Like one, when I feel the spiritual aspect of it, that we are such powerful and beautiful, light, bright beings on this planet because of that spiritual side of us. And we need to nurture our soul and to build our soul and our essence with spiritual practices, as people say. And that can include loving yourself, because when we love ourselves, we will love others. And I don't mean ego and pride and I'm all that and I'm the best and look at me. That's not what I mean. I think you know what I mean. When pride and egos is at the forefront, those are disorders and mental illnesses. Those aren't from a spiritual place in our essence. But how many of us are taught that when we're children? I know I went to Catholic school and I was told I was sinful. I was born sinful. I needed Jesus to help me. I needed this, and I was not good enough, and I'm never going to get to heaven, and all these horrible, horrible things to tell a child. Plus, being abused at home and bullied in the streets is like, what chance did I have, And I know my story is just one of how many millions. So I look back on that and go, wow, I turned out pretty decent, I think, all in all. I'm not tooting my horn, but I know I had great guidance in my life. I did. I had certain people, and I know spiritual guidance in my life that really helped me get to where I am. And I still have a long way to go, but get to where I am, which I think is not so bad. So to look at it that way, and if children knew that there was a part of them that was of the divine, that was beautiful and light and bright, and to learn age-appropriate understanding of how to be in touch with that part of us. Yes, we make mistakes because human. Well, how do we respond to our mistakes? And that's where there's a lot more teaching that needs to be understood. Instead of punishment, harsh discipline, there needs to be more of a reasonable understanding of ourselves, of our innate kind of selfishness and, not wanting to share when you're little and all that kind of stuff, like how to age appropriately teach children how to be a really good human being. It does take a lot of wisdom, and it takes parents who are aware and who have worked on themselves and continually, as things come up or they discover things, work on themselves. That's a rare thing, though, I think, in our culture. I hope there's more of it. I do. Maybe there is more enlightenment and awareness of it, but it's important, and that every child's different. I raised 4 children. They were all different. Their personalities were different. How I had to direct and discipline maybe my older daughter was very different than my youngest son, even though they're a lot alike, but their sensitivities and personality were very different. I was a young mother, and there's so many things I would do differently. So many things I would do differently. When you know better, you do better, right? So, and I didn't, but I did my best at what I knew and what I had at my disposal of understanding. And I always like to read about parenting and being a good parent and all that. So I think I did my best, but I made blunders, God knows. And my children could probably tell you too. But so I'm saying all that because our upbringing, our connection and attachments to our parents and our relationship with our parents is really directive to how we'll be as adults if we're unaware of our dysfunction in that. Not that we caused it, not that we created it, but it happened and it's within us. And as adults, we need to take responsibility to make that correction. Now, these what's being shared, I'm going to share 4 different ones. I'm going to read a little bit about them and then go a little more detail, but they're not a personality thing. It's not like it's a personality thing. It's emotionally driven. So they aren't like a mental illness. Now, can people with certain mental illnesses or disorders have these attachment styles? Definitely, yeah. And I'll mention it. I'll talk about that. But all in all, it doesn't mean that if you have this type of relating with somebody or to a loved one or a friendship or a partner, it doesn't mean there's a disorder or a mental illness. It just means it's an emotional way that you learn to attach. And so this is what's transpiring now in adulthood. So the first one, which is what we all want, is the secure attachment, right? It's that security. It's I have friends in my life who had really, really decent upbringing, loving parents, caring, educated, kind, a nice balance. They didn't overindulge a child, which creates narcissism, and they didn't over discipline or ignore, which can create narcissism as well, and other disorders and mental illnesses. But they were very balanced. And yeah, there were mistakes made, there were here and there. But when you have an overall loving family, healthy family unit, those mistakes or blunders or whatever in parenting, there's so much good that those kind of get washed over. Whereas the opposite can happen where there's very little good and there's a lot of dysfunction. And those stick with us. The secure attachment. These adults are more likely to be satisfied with their relationships, feeling secure and connected to their partners without feeling the need to be together all the time. See, so there's that safety. It's like that one child, that one baby I told you about, who was like fussed a little bit when the mother left the room, but then played with the toys and interacted with other children because they had that security that somehow they knew mom was going to come back. And that's exactly what happened. Their relationships are likely to feature honesty, support, independence, and deep emotional connections. And isn't that what we all want? We all want that. And honesty in this feature is underlined. We all want honesty. We have to have trust and honesty in a relationship. Without it, it's like, what's the use? What's the use if you can't trust your partner and be honest with one another? There's got to be support as well, independence, and deep emotional connections. It's that emotional connections that show the maturity of a person. Being able to emotionally connect with another and being able to identify your emotions and understand them and understand those of your partner or friends or relatives, whatever. It really shows a maturity, the emotional intelligence. See, emotional intelligence is understood and needed in our lives. So that's a healthy relationship, and we all want that. That's what we all strive for. That's what we want, right? That's what we hope for. But when there's dysfunction in our lives, we're thinking the other person's going to bring it, don't we? We think the other person's going to bring it and soothe my wounds. And then maybe I'll be okay. It just doesn't work that way. So the next one is dismissive avoidant. It's an anxious avoidant connection or attachment. Now, the other thing I want to say is we're using the word attachment because this is a theory and this has to do with children. I think in adult relationships, we want a healthy connection. I would rather use the word connection, but I will use the term attachment here because it is talking about the theory. So this one, the anxious avoidant, one of the two types of adult avoidant attachments, people with this attachment style generally keep their distance from others. They may feel they don't need human connection to survive or thrive and insist on maintaining their independence and isolation from others. A misanthrope is another word for it. These individuals are often able to shut down emotionally when potentially hurtful scenarios arise, such as a serious argument with their partner or a threat to continuance of their relationship. So think about when you were a child and difficulties happen. Maybe you saw your parents fight all the time. Maybe you squabbled with your siblings really severely because it was exampled for you by your parents. There's an anxiety there because you are not being heard, you are not being respected, you are not able to communicate what you want to communicate, nor were you taught to communicate what you need to communicate, right? So we shut down. We just shut down. And so there is the tendency when an argument begins, and I think arguments are a type of dysfunction. There's one, we can disagree and it can get a little bit heated, but just arguing for arguing and being loud and obnoxious and calling each other names is so unnecessary. And that's one person's way of relating. The other person might be this anxious avoidant, and suddenly it's like, oh no, they're back in childhood. They're back in childhood. So what happens? That inner child comes right out to defend you. And that inner child only knew what to do as a child was run to their room, hide, get under the covers, protect themselves. That is still in operation because there's a shutdown. Even when the potential of a disagreement might come up, there's a shutdown. Instead of just a mature adult conversation about what you disagree on, or looking at the different outlooks on things, and having, okay, we just are going to agree to disagree with this right now. We can come back to this later when it's more important. You know, that kind of outlook. It causes such anxiety. And I know I struggle with anxiety. And I knew I would feel sick in my marriage sometimes, so anxious, because I didn't feel heard. I wasn't really able to speak my truth. I stumbled over my words. I was so nervous. So that happens. And I understand it now better because I understand what happened when I was young. That's exactly what happened. So now there's the anxious, preoccupied attachment, or it's also called anxious resistant attachment. Those who form less secure bonds with their partners may feel desperate for love or affection and feel that their partner must complete them or fix their problems. While they long for safety and security in their romantic relationship, they may also be acting in ways that push their partner away rather than invite them in. The behavioral manifestations of their fears can include being clingy, demanding, jealous, or easily upset by small issues, because there's so much insecurity in that person, a minefield of insecurity and not being enough. So this person's going to make me enough. They're going to complete me. And I don't know about you, but have you ever been around a very needy person? It's really distressing because they call you every minute. They want your opinion on everything, and are they doing things right? And there's this anxiety to them, and also they can't make a decision for themselves. They have to have someone else make them feel good enough, or make them feel like they made the right decision. You know, which dress do I wear? You know, in a panic. You know, it's not like, oh, what do you think? You like this color? This, you know, it's not like a friendly kind of, oh, what's your opinion? It's I need to know what you think because I don't know what I'm thinking. So it's very preoccupied with the neediness. And, you know, this is where, if I would say the very extreme, someone who would develop the borderline personality disorder, where abandonment issues are severe with them. It's like being on fire to think someone's going to leave the room. Think of that child. What did they put up with when they were a child? Were they left to cry themselves to sleep? Were they left, hungry until the mother decided she'd get up off the couch, feed the child? I mean, you can imagine the emotional distress that a child was put through to grow up as an adult with this clingy neediness of this other person, and that they feel that other person's going to make them whole, and it never works. So the extreme of this did develop into a disorder. It's not likely. It doesn't mean if someone feels clingy and uncertain or insecure has a disorder. It just means they're emotionally immature. They haven't developed their self-love, their self-security, their self-confidence, that they are amazing human beings, who they are. And how can they develop better, and how can they strengthen that weakness? There are so many ways to do it. We don't have to go around our life feeling less than or unimportant or not good enough, because what humans tend to do is compare their worst with someone else's best under the spotlight. That is not fair. It is not fair to you, and it's not fair to the other person who I'm sure has had difficult days in their life. Why do we do that? Why do we make that mental suffering of ourselves by comparing our weaknesses to someone else's strengths and goals and their goodness and whatever we think, they are? We can't do that. And the only thing I can think of is we do that because, I can think of people in my lifetime when I was young whose parents would compare them with the kid down the street who got straight A's. What about little Johnny? They get straight A's. What's wrong with you? Why can't you? It breaks my heart when I think about that now. I heard that conversation. Can you imagine? So no wonder we're infiltrated with, we're not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not bright enough, I'm not that clever, I can't do what they do. Well, maybe you're not meant to do what they do. You have other qualities, abilities, and strengths and talents. And that's what needs to be explored within yourself and developed. And when you do that, I'm telling you, self-confidence, self-esteem, self-appreciation starts to grow. Yeah. That's why I'm saying self-love is so important. You know that there's that spiritual, beautiful DNA in you that wants to grow your soul and develop and teaches us and guides us and helps us with our, it comes through intuition as well, if we allow it. I know when I was young, I was banned from listening to my gut feeling or intuition. It was supposed to be wrong and evil. You only had the Bible to go by. You don't ever trust your own instincts. I'm like, I look back on that now, I'm like, holy hell, what was that about? What were they afraid of? That people really get to know themselves and love themselves and actually think for themselves? Heaven forbid, right? Okay, so here's another one. This is the last one. It's called fearful avoidant or disorganized. It's an disorganized attachment. The second type of adult avoidant attachment manifests as ambivalence rather than isolation. So instead of them go hide, these people with this style of attachment generally try to avoid their feelings because it is easy to get overwhelmed by them. They don't know how to handle their feelings. They may suffer from unpredictable or abrupt mood swings and fear getting hurt by a romantic partner. These individuals are simultaneously drawn to a partner or potential partner and fearful of getting too close. Unsurprisingly, this style makes it difficult to form and maintain meaningful relationships with others. This will be the serial dater. This will be the one who loves the feeling of being in love, but as soon as something goes wrong, they're out of there. And it's not even love, really, it's infatuation. But they're out of there. They're the serial daters. They're the ones who will date only people that fit perfectly for them in their perception. And once something happens, a little something, boom, they're out of there. They're so afraid. That's the thing. It's really fearful because they can't manage their own emotions. They don't understand. They think they have this idea that, again, that this person is going to make me whole. They're going to fix everything. And if something goes wrong, they can't address their own issues. They tend to blame the other person and then they're gone. So, hang on just a second. I'm going to just keep it there for a minute because there's a lot more. And I know that if you are more interested, you can even Google Dr. John Bowlby or attachment theories, and Because like I said, I'd be here for days if I kept talking about this. But it's a fascinating way to think about ourselves. Now, here's something to think about. I know it has helped me over the years when I have my awareness intact. Because oops, there goes my computer. Hang on, it's doing a glitchy thing. Okay, back. Okay. Because we live 95% of the time like in a subconscious way. And if we develop our subconscious well, if we fix those things, if we can manage to heal as much as we can, the default way of living won't be so dysfunctional, right? But if we're not aware of it and we just stay in the default mode, reactions go all over the place. Fear, anxiety, depression, everything will go amok because we think we have no control or can understand it. Not always easy changing these aspects of our lives, but when we are aware of it and learn to figure out, okay, what's the best way? Maybe just reading a couple of good books on the subject can help change that around for you. Sometimes that's all what people need in their awareness. Others might need some counseling or even therapy in order to, maybe they need a certain kind of medication or not. I don't know. I'm not pushing medication. I think it's a great tool to have, but I want people to really, really investigate and learn about what they're taking and side effects and everything, so that you're taking it with full knowledge of how it's supposed to help you. And if there are certain side effects that come up that are distressing, to make sure you let that doctor know so they can adjust it. I think too many people are so trusting, like, yeah, okay, I'll take that. That should help. And it doesn't do the trick. It doesn't work. And they don't understand why. And they still think it's their problem. Like, it's me. I can't even make a pill work for me, that kind of feeling. So just be aware, be educated, and understand everything about your type of therapy and any medication that might be prescribed for you. So I just want to let you know up front. Just educate yourself. That's all. So I got sidetracked. Sorry about that. But here's what I'm going to say. If we can be aware of our behaviors, our habits, our ways of reacting, if we can almost be like we're ourself looking down on ourselves, doing something or reacting or having a habit or acting out, we can see it. If we can be aware of it, sometimes it might be after the fact. It might be like the next day, oh man, I can't believe I reacted that way. All right, let me think about, where did that come from? Where did that reaction stem from? Yes, I was upset, but man, I didn't need to overreact like that. And then if we have that awareness, we can understand it's the stuff underneath that is bubbling up. It's that inner child, that scared, emotionally stuck inner child coming up to our rescue. Because we're so used to it. It's a habit. We're so used to that's going to happen. And then when we get awareness to it, then we can do some inner child discussion. We can address it. We can go, look, sweetheart, you've had to work hard all your life trying to defend me in this area. I appreciate it. When we were younger, it was perfect. I'm an adult now. Now I need to learn how to take care of this. I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to help myself emotionally. So you, sweetheart, go out and play. Go have fun. I got this. I know that kind of discussion helped me in my life, and even looking at a picture of myself at 10 years old, having that discussion. Yes, I cried a lot, but I also healed. I could recover. I could change my ways. I could change my reaction to healthy responses. I could still love myself if I made a mistake. These things are so important to understand because you are an amazing human being and you are a miracle on this planet. We all are. And we all matter. When we lose sight of what I just said is when we let the subconscious, the default mode, take over in our lives, and we just live like a computer. We get our computers brand new. It's in its default mode. Now you could leave it like that, or you can delete what you don't want. You can add the apps that you do want. They're going to be helpful for your, maybe your job or your writing skills or communication, whatever. Now I know we're not computers, but in a way our brain is like a computer. So we can delete the apps we don't want, so to speak, and download the ones we do want. And downloading, I learned from John Assaraf. I loved his approach because I learned a lot too about the brain because he did so much study himself. He had some wonderful meditations that I really loved listening to. In fact, I might bring those back up. It's been like 11 years, but I remember at the time how helpful they were. Writing our minds to envision like a chip within us with a certain dysfunction or something we want to get rid of, and downloading the one we want, like envisioning that and talking us through that with this music. It was really cool. I really, really liked it a lot. I got to find those, see if I can pull that back up, because I'm always going to be, I don't know about you, but I think in my life, I'm going to be addressing things, changing things out, wanting to grow and learn better. You know, just, I don't want to overdo it because I think some people can always be on that path that they miss out on real life. You know, like they're always in a class, they're always signing up for a course, they're always, you know, and that's all they're focused on, and not enjoying and living out a life that they've already learned from and enjoyed. And yeah, I think sometimes we need to be aware of that. And where does that come from? The not enough. I'm not enough. I don't know enough. Oh my gosh, I got stuck in that years ago, and I was like, oh wait, what am I doing? Why do I keep? They're saying the same thing this so and so said, and they're saying the same thing that they said. So why did I keep? Because I felt I wasn't smart enough or I wasn't learning enough, and I had to just stop. I made myself stop signing up for stuff and go live my life. So that was a big, wonderful thing for me, I have to say. It's not like I still don't want to learn, because I do. There are aspects of my life that I feel in my gut. I'm like, yes, this is a big yes. If it's got to be a hell yes or it's a hell no. That's how I'm taking life now. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for listening. And I hope that this gave some insight into how we function in relationships. Why, like, again, why do we react the way we react? How can we function better in relationships with our friends, family, our partners, our spouses? And maybe even some internal dialogue of, am I with the right person? Maybe you actually positively are. It just hasn't meshed well enough because of certain things, certain subconscious ways that would come up in you or maybe in them. And again, I want to go back to that book I mentioned, Harville Hendrix' book, Getting the Love You Want. I read it about 22 years ago. It's an excellent book. And I think you would get a lot out of it. So, because it involves the couples helping each other. So thank you. Remember, you're amazing. Think of yourself as a walking miracle on this planet and that you matter so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you Monday.